Hello, everybody. How we doing? My name is Brad Smith. I'm with AMD. I'm the corporate vice president in cloud sales and responsible for the Amazon and AMD relationship. We have a great deal of resources that spend time working directly with AWS and EC2 and various parties to figure out how to leverage AMD technology, as well as we spend a lot of time in the field working with customers, helping them use those services in the cloud. So it's a pretty big operation, getting bigger every day. And I myself have been with AMD a couple years. It's been quite a journey, but I will say this: show of hands, how many people were here last year? Is it all one? Just a few? About 3 or 4? Wow. So that was after COVID, right? That was after COVID, and it was I don't know how to describe it. It was a little tepid. It was kind of, weren't really sure, right? Is that accurate? I think about a third of the size of the people. All right, so I mean, this place is hopping right now, right? I mean, I think they were talking over 60,000 people at the conference. It's fantastic. And it was last year, I was excited just to get out. And but you know, one of the mixed blessings about COVID is it makes you remember how important it is to connect and to be out with people again. And it's funny, a lot of us, myself included, still trying to get back into the rhythm in full swing, and it takes a while. It was pretty amazing how impactful that whole thing was. But you know, so this has been a journey for myself with AMD. I spent my career, I started with Intel. My background's actually software and networking architecture. So I spent many years in the R&D side and automation material handling with Intel. So you know, I spent quite a bit of time there, and then I was lucky enough to start working with companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Apple and others in about that 2007, 2008 timeframe, when cloud scale really started to take hold, right? Public cloud itself didn't really exist. I mean, I'm not even sure if there was a cloud. I think there were cloud references, things in the cloud back then, right? Thanks to Apple and I think iCloud about that time. But I was lucky enough to be part of that build out. So from a networking architecture perspective, whether it was Amazon.com or iCloud or iPay or Siri and the entire evolution of that and everything else with Microsoft and Office 365, I've been absolutely astounded at the scale. It still blows me away how big these environments are. And so I have kind of a unique perspective, and I joined AMD a couple years ago. AMD really is a new player in this arena, new relative terms. So the very first time that AMD launched an instance with AWS was in 2018, and that was the first generation EPYC processor from our data center group, and it was codenamed Naples. Great intro product. Not great when you look at it now and you're looking back, but of course first gen never is, right? But it was a great way to start that entrance. And so AMD's been growing at a pretty good pace ever since, especially in the data center space. And so I'm really excited. I love working with Amazon. I love working with AWS. I tell people all the time, it's extremely, the culture with this company, these companies are amazing. Everybody's incredibly collaborative, can be very terse and very direct, but which is awesome, right? Because we're all very busy. We don't have time. So it's best just to get right to the point and get moving, right? So with that said, I'll quit talking too much here. But for today, a couple things I also want to make note of. We're having an event at Canaletto in the Venetian. So we're renting out a large portion of that restaurant. Love for everyone to come, have some drinks at 6 o'clock, right? So a little happy hour action there. We're doing an event tomorrow at Topgolf as well. Come by the Expo Center. We've got a huge booth at the Expo Center with a really cool game that we've set up. We're trying to slowly introduce some fun into the environment here. AMD's got a lot of gaming experience and a great brand for that area. And we're trying to slowly introduce that into reInvent. And every year you'll see a little ramp up, a little bit more from us there. So we're excited. And I think last year was our first time being kind of a major sponsor here. And this year, you'll see our presence increase even more. So, as like I said, it's a journey, Every year is going to get a little bit better from us. So we'll talk a little bit about our technology. We'll talk a little bit about what's new. And I'll highlight some of our solutions and some of our partners. And in reality, the thing to think about here for this talk with us today and myself is that this is going to be a little bit more business-centered. Okay, so I'm not a speeds and feeds person any longer. I think I've outlived my use when it comes to that at this point. So, but we've got plenty of colleagues here. I think we've got over 40 people on site from AMD right now. Quite a few different executives. A lot of my peers are here as well. So it's a good time if there's something you're really digging into. I highly recommend you take a look. You go to our Expo Center facility. We've got people there all the time. We've got various partners coming at different times. Come by, ask questions. Today, I'll talk for about another 25 minutes at most, and the rest will be Q&A, right? So again, anything we can't answer, I can't answer, my colleagues can't answer. We'll take you aside and we'll get some information, and we'll get back in touch with you, or we'll meet you at the Expo Center and have the conversation. So with that said, let's get going. So AMD, it's always, I use the word journey all the time because life just is. And when you look at kind of a mission or a belief system, our vision is simple: is the world is changing every day, obviously, but it's really changing due to high performance computing and adaptive computing. And so the goal, the mission of AMD is to build great products to accelerate that process. It's really simple, right? So we see the vision, we see the long term, we understand how much better our lives can be due to this innovation. And it's really, we talk about this when it comes to especially environmental impact and a lot of things that AMD is very focused on. And we believe that some of the best ways to solve those problems are through innovation, right? And more and more compute power at less and less power consumption, right? So this innovation curve is something we believe very strongly in. So, as we've seen a lot of growth over the past few years, and if you follow AMD at all, since I've been with the company a few years, it's doubled in size from a headcount perspective. And with that, you have a lot of new ideas, right? Fresh blood, I always refer to, I love, because you just don't know what you don't know. And because of that, we're able to build even better and better products. So our performance, you'll see this exponential increase over time because of the new perspectives and the new talent that we've been able to bring into the company. So, it's a great time. It's a great time to be at AMD. It's a great time to be in this compute world that we're all in, and we're very excited about the future. So with that growth and that evolution, of course, obviously your core areas of focus change as well. And so we got five pillars that we look at as far as how we consider the areas that we're going to spend our time. And these new pillars kind of complement, in effect, they complement our broader vision. And they're part of what we call a new marketing initiative, and you'll see that come from AMD at length, and some really good stuff, actually. I'm not much of a marketing guy myself, so I've always kind of a sneer at that, but I gotta tell you, it's pretty good. And it makes a lot of sense, and it's Together We Advance. And the concept is, look, we've got, AMD is not the same AMD it used to be. It's not a desktop competitor to Intel and some ancillary client market. It's a completely different company. That's one of the things that most people don't even know about AMD at this point. Is we're dead center in many, many crucial markets now. We have a very broad set of products. And whether you're focused on compute, you're focused on data center, pervasive AI, or custom silicon solutions, AMD has the ability to solve most, if not all, of the complex problems that the world's facing that are bound by compute and compute-related issues because of that breadth. So, we are leaders in multiple markets, and I highly recommend, you'll hear me say this all the time, go to AMD.com, check out the latest stuff. Just see what's there. When I got approached when I was leaving my previous company, I'm not sure how they found out I was leaving, but they gave me a call and they said, you probably don't want to come back to a semiconductor company. And I told them, no, I absolutely do not. I have no interest, right? And they said, just hear us out, have a conversation. I did, and I got a chance to meet Lisa Su and her team, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. An absolute force of nature, and makes decisions for all the right reasons, right? All the right reasons, always, without question. Even if it damages the company and sends it down a path or sets it back for a while, right? It's a very good company to believe in. You should dig in, understand a little bit more about what AMD can do. So with that said, AWS and AMD working together, very powerful, right? So as part of this innovation cycle, right, we partner with AWS to develop industry-leading cloud computing solutions. And in these areas, we focus on performance, we focus on sustainability, we focus on cost efficiency, and we focus on scale, right? So we are at the forefront of delivering some of the most innovative solutions in the marketplace. And ultimately providing choice and flexibility is the goal, right? And those are the main goals in the end, is providing you choice and flexibility in what you're doing. And together, AMD and AWS deliver on this with increasing momentum on this journey. We've had some releases we'll talk about this year, about some instances. We got more coming every day. You'll see the momentum growing between the two companies. I said this last year on stage. I'll say it this year. I'll say it again next year if AMD will keep me, right? So it's the same pace. So we are growing at a very, very quick clip with the companies, and it's a fantastic partnership. So let's go through some of the technology side of this. We'll start with just our cloud product portfolio. When you look at, say, the AMD drive and innovation, we focus in high-performance computing, graphics, and visualization technologies, which enables us to lead in performance, efficiency, and security, and scale, right? And our path forward is kind of simple. It's about helping existing and new customers modernize infrastructure, right? And modernize it with the latest technology. And, we are supported by an amazing technical specialist team that it amazes me how few companies take advantage of these specialists. They're not consultants. They're not coming in with billable hours. They're coming in to help you make your applications even better. And you'll hear me talk a lot about applications. And for me, the applications are the key. Software drives everything. So the hardware has the ability to execute at a certain performant level. But it really is on the software to figure out how to take advantage of those resources. And it's a lost art. It's amazing to me. And I was in the software networking space for years. I'd never once considered what CPU I was using, or what my team was using, or whoever was building something on my behalf. It never came up, right? And so in coming to AMD, my eyes were open. It's like, oh, wow. So simple changes in your compiler can juice out additional 10 to 15% of performance, right? You start adding that up across multiple architectural shifts, and then you start talking about the instance types you use and everything else, and then maybe the configurations of those instance types. And then you start to re-architect the way your applications communicate with one another. It's incredible what you can do over time when you look just purely at optimization, but you do it at a code level. It's just something that isn't done enough, right? So we'll talk about a little bit about that. So I think, when you think of AMD, there are multiple brands to consider now within AMD, right? So, of course, we're going to say we have superior compute technology. I don't think it would make sense for me to come up and say, yeah, we're okay, right? As far as we're concerned, we're kicking people's butts right now. And I think the one thing we just don't do well of is we don't get out enough. We don't toot our own horn. We're not out there shouting at the top of the hill, right? And that's something that will change over time. But we offer the industry's broadest portfolio of technologies. Whether it's CPUs, GPUs, FPGAs, adaptive SoCs, right? Or you're focused on deep software expertise, right? We enable choice across many platforms for cloud, edge, and end user compute. So high performance compute is obvious when you think about AMD. But the portfolio is growing with recent acquisitions of Xilinx and Pensando, right? So you think about Xilinx and adaptive acceleration. You think about Pensando and high-performance networking capacity, right? So at AWS, you will see Xilinx integrations. You'll see greater blending between the classic EPYC brand of data center CPU and the Xilinx technology. And that'll lead into pervasive AI. It'll lead into things like video transcoding. It'll lead into a lot of other solutions that no other company can put together, right, in a single package. That's what's unique. We are the number one competitor of two behemoth companies in two completely different segments. And that doesn't take into account our recent acquisitions and where we play right now in FPGAs. There's a lot going on at AMD, right? And you layer on that top of Instinct and the Versal lines, and you start talking how to tackle some of the most difficult AI and machine learning problems that exist. We talk about the need for compute over time, that rapid acceleration. Well, you know, pure compute is accelerating, but the hockey stick is on the AI and ML side, right? And I've seen analysts actually put together some material. They're starting to estimate how long before we run out of compute based on those needs and the pace of demand. It feeds on itself, right? These models feed on themselves, and they get better and better and better. It's incredible what can be done, right? And AMD is uniquely positioned in this area. So we start talking about AWS EC2 instances themselves. So powered by AMD. So, you know, why should someone in this discussion, why should they consider AMD? Well, there's three core reasons. One is cost efficiency. So just out of the box, we'll call a codeless solution, right? No code solution, right? You can instantly, from a retail pricing perspective, see the benefit of anywhere from 10 to 45% lower cost out of the box, right? So I talk with AWS leadership all the time, and they're telling me constantly, every CEO they're talking to, top of mind, the very first thing out of their mouth is we need to do more with what we have. We can't increase budget. We might even have to reduce our budget, right? We're all seeing that. And for anybody that thinks, hey, it's almost over, it's not. I mean, 23 is going to be a slog. So it's amazing to me to think that, you know, someone wouldn't look at AMD automatically off the board and go, look, if it's most cloud bills, most public cloud bills, more than 50% of that's compute, right? More than 50% of that's compute. And these are large bills. These are not cheap services, as you guys know, right? So you layer that on top of performance, and you think, okay, you could look at maybe the specific, you know, M6A versus M5A, previous generations. You can look at, you know, you can see a tremendous performance boost there. Our high performance compute, the very first AWS labeled HPC instance, HPC 6A, which is a fantastic product, it's a game changer. That alone can buy you up to 65% benefits in not only the typical high performance compute application workloads, but common workloads. I'm seeing it used more and more in things that have nothing to do with HPC, just because there's just so much juice to that instance, that package itself, right? But you layer in a retail savings of whatever that is on top of performance benefits of just the generational change. If you also at the same time layer in software changes, you start to really look at your particular workload. So every technology lends itself to perform well, better in some environments. So when you start thinking about various very specific applications, so you could start talking about things like containerized workloads, right? It has a very unique profile. Looks a lot different than a database, okay, when it comes to CPU and what it takes to actually, finish transmissions or finish jobs. It's very different. So AMD lends itself very well in containerized workloads, just by the nature of our architecture. So you can do things like get a retail benefit of 10%. You can get a performance benefit of upgrading your generational use, right? And on top of that, if you do any level of optimization on your application, you start layering it all together. That's tremendous savings. Now you start to talk to your CFO about this, and you do that net present value calculation over a 3-year or 5-year period, depending on your accounting principles. And now you're talking, right? That value is going to be a lot higher than you think it is right now. It's not just the 10% benefit that you get on the instance, right? So it's something you got to consider. And I think it's more of a question at this point of, well, why not, right? Well, on top of that, x86 compatibility. We all know this, right? It doesn't require refactoring. You don't have to build. You have to rebuild, recompile. There's nothing you have to do there. You can, in most cases, simply flip. And there are a multitude of companies, I'll highlight one of those partners today, that can do this on your behalf. And not only can do it, but will actually tell you exactly where you can and can't change, and what those what those price benefits will be, right? They make it really easy. It's quite phenomenal, some of these tools. And AMD is actually taking the initiative right now to find the best tools out there. So you'll see this. We're going to start launching more and more programs around FinOps, the concept of FinOps. It seems everybody's using the buzzword now, but really it's cost optimization, it's compute optimization, right? And we believe that it's more than just a retail benefit. You got to bring in your best engineers, start talking about your application, and really squeeze out the best out of that environment. AWS is fantastic at doing this, so is AMD, right? So again, why not take advantage? Why not take advantage of this opportunity? It's just generally the right thing to do. So when you start looking today, you say, well, let's talk about right-sizing your instance types, right? So, like I said, we first launched our first instance in 2018, but our count's been increasing steadily. So we've got over 14 public instances. There'll be more launched this week. There'll be more launched next quarter. You're going to see this move. This pace will increase very, very rapidly. We've already seen it. You start thinking about whether it's like general purpose compute, or it's compute optimized, or it's memory optimized. We have that. You start talking about application-specific workloads like HPC, or maybe even adaptive acceleration, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do, very specific. I talked a little bit about video transcoding. So we've got an F1 offering for adaptive acceleration. FPGA technology as a service. FPGA as a service is a fascinating concept. If you've got the ability to really leverage that type of tech, I highly recommend you check it out. VT1 was also a first of its kind, right? So you've got video transcoding acceleration as well. Again, leveraging our portfolio of the Xilinx technologies. So many more options to come. So with that, let's talk a little bit about security and confidential computing. So when it comes to confidential compute, within the context of a CPU, there are three main areas to consider, okay? Data at rest, data at transit, and data in use. So data at rest is simple, your files. Thinking mentally, it's easy to comprehend that. Transit, you're thinking about something going over the wire, right? And that's typically where most software solutions, security solutions operate. You think about the classic networking firewall. Transit, blocking ports, not doing a lot of other stuff. Some stateful inspection takes it to another level. But you don't ever hear talk about data in use, right? So the actual process of executing those computational calls, right, in the CPU, what happens there? So we're all familiar with the concept of virtualization now, right? So this idea of the applications beginning to compress downward into hardware is something I like to talk about all the time. I think you'll see that, right? So you'll start to see more and more enhanced capabilities built right in. And we've seen it for years, but that trend is going to continue. So as our technology evolves, as our cache systems increase, as the capability of the actual CPUs increase, you'll see this. And this is one of the best parts of this, is you now have the ability to operate within a virtualized area on the chip itself, right? Which gives you complete data integrity protection, right? Start to finish, top down. And when you start to look at that, the technology is called SEV-SMP, or Secure Encrypted Virtualization, Secure Nested Paging. And you're going to see more evolution of this come with every generation, but Milan and Genoa have it. We are working with our cloud partners to launch something there as well. We're trying to get that going. And it really, I talk a lot about no code solutions. It's a no code solution here again, right? Something to take advantage of that most people don't even know exists. And it's tremendously powerful. You start talking about reducing your surface attack area, right? This is a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it. So, really think about confidential compute. Again, AMD.com has some tremendous material on this. You can go as deep as you want. I mean, it's a rabbit hole of rabbit holes, quite frankly. It's a lot of fun, if you get the time. But take a look at it. And I think, going down the same path. So technology leadership around sustainability. This is one of the things I love about the partnership between AMD and AWS. We share common missions, right? One of those common missions is sustainability. It's something that AMD takes very seriously and have for a very long time, and so does AWS. And AWS took the initiative, signing the climate pledge, right? And they've committed to provide 100% renewable energy in their data centers by 2025. That's just, it's not that far, right? It's not far away. It's a tremendous commitment. Along the same lines, AMD back in 2020 did something similar. So we took the initiative called the 30 by 25, and it was targeting a substantial decrease in power consumption of our entire product portfolio across everything, that entire list of products by 2025. And we are outpacing the industry. It's not even close, by the way. And something to consider when you start looking at, we'll talk a little bit about our latest EPYC release, Genoa. Out of the box, 30% less power consumption, period. Right? AMD has no equal in x86 in this area. And I love to tell people your EC2 instance choice matters. It has an impact. Even if you don't see that impact on your bottom line, right? It matters. AWS launched not too long ago a customer carbon footprint estimator, right, based on your environment, what you're using. There are plenty of companies out there that also measure by data centers. They'll measure AWS versus all the other cloud providers. But AWS is taking it a little further. They're also eventually, hopefully, going to be launching an extension of that, which includes it down to the EC2 instance type, right? So if we get to that point, what you're eventually going to see is you're going to see a very big disparity between AMD and any other x86 offering that exists out there, okay? You start talking about using those types of tools for reporting for your ESG reports. Maybe even down the road. My dream is to get down the road where we get to a point where we can start maybe generating carbon offsets in the same manner, right? You should benefit from making the right choices, all right? But regardless, it's the right choice. It's the right choice. At the very least, it should be considered, right? So when you stack this up against a similar server configuration, ultimately what you're going to see, it's pretty self-explanatory. So AMD has industry-leading performance, industry-leading density, and industry-leading power efficiency. So what does that translate to in the real world? Fewer servers, right? Fewer servers, and more performance per server, and even less power per server. So take in consideration, if you're on-prem, you're in cloud, it really doesn't matter. AMD is at the forefront of environmental concern and driving the industry, not ourselves, but others, to do better, And if anyone in this room has ESG targets, this makes a hell of a pitch, right? It makes a hell of a pitch. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about high-performance computing along the same lines. So we are the preeminent player in exascale, right? So we are the first company to break that level. First one, okay? There's a top 500 list of supercomputer offerings out there. We've got 101 of those right now. On top of that, we've got 8 of the top 10 most efficient green energy supercomputers out there. Again, this is an area that just can't be matched. We are a dominant player in this space, and we're very proud of it. It's something we spend a great deal of energy and resources in working on, right? And again, we believe it's necessary. We believe that the information that can be extracted from these types of environments are critical. It's critical to business success. It's critical to humanity's success. All right, it's a big part of our culture. So taking that a little further, you look at HPC 6A. So HPC 6A was the very first, like I said, HPC named EC2 instance. And it's been a game changer. It's been a game changer. So AWS, approached AMD. They very much wanted to get into this space. They understand that it's a much different environment. You look at, Frontier, you look at some of those exascale systems. I mean, we're a ways away from being able to produce something like that, I think, in the cloud, but not that far, right? There's a lot of benefits in AWS and how they architect their internal communication paths, right? And how data transfers, how network transfers in between these environments. It's incredible. Nitro is a beast of a product. It really is fantastic. And they've done a great job of maximizing that. So you start to think about those, and you start thinking about coupling that with the high performance capability of AMD and that inherent efficiency in their infrastructure. It's not hard to imagine mesh environments that can do incredible computational performance, right? So, HPC 6A, you start looking at it again, it's 65% better price performance than anything else you're going to find. It's tailor-made for computational fluid dynamics. It's tailor-made for weather simulations, anything else in that area, right? And for anybody that spends time in that space, it's very application dependent. The great thing about that industry, they tailor their applications to the hardware. That's how they get so much performance, right? Something that all of us should take note of. So we have the dominant, the dominant player in density, we have the dominant player in performance, and it's available, has been for some time, and you'll see more evolutions on this. And I think they're going to be expanding. They have already announced some expansion in their HPC program itself with other technologies, and we love it. Let's keep pushing that envelope. We're excited about it. We've got some even bigger stuff coming, so should be a lot of fun in the future here. So we'll change tacks a little bit. What's new? So from a regional perspective, look, like I said, we've got 14 unique instance types. We've got 97 different configurations for configuration options at the moment. We're covering the vast majority of all regions as AZs across the globe. So we're present. I think 22 was interesting because there was a lot of capacity constraints that existed. I think that still exist, right? So it's not uncommon to be in a region or be in an AZ in a particular area and just not be able to procure the capacity you need. It's not uncommon. And honestly, there was a lot of things that happened in 22, but you're going to see a mass amount of capacity hit in 23. So I think my message to everyone here is if you are being constricted by a lack of capacity in a region or anywhere, wherever your particular workload's trying to run, let your AWS counterpart know, contact AMD, right? So I've got a very large team that can't wait to speak to you about this. So reach out, right? So reach out, especially now. If you know this is an issue right now, go to our booth, talk to our people, and we'll have conversations. The benefit of talking to us directly is that we have direct line into EC2, so we work with them constantly, right? So they are a very, very trusted partner of ours. And they don't want us to be blocked either. They don't want you to be blocked from trying to adopt technology you want to use. That's the great thing about AWS. It's core to their mission, right? Everything they do, every benefit they build in, every cost benefit, they pass on to you. And that's true. It's absolutely true. I've seen it. I've worked with them for 14 years. It's absolutely true. It's a big part of their culture. So let's talk this now. Genoa. So earlier this month, AMD announced the release of our long-awaited Genoa processor family. So Genoa, it's built on the Zen 4 core. Okay, this epic offering has the highest performance per core of anything that AMD's ever released. Period. Okay, the 4th Gen EPYC product delivers industry leadership in x86 performance, density, and energy efficiency. Same messaging, right? Leadership in performance, density, energy efficiency. This product has up to 96 cores, okay, on 5 nanometer. It includes 12-channel DDR5 and PCIe Gen 5 with CXL expansion, making it perfectly suited for x86 cloud workloads. Okay? There's nothing available today from EC2. But we are very, very excited that AWS has recently announced the support for the Genoa processor family. So with that said, keep your eyes open, right? We got some great stuff coming. And let me tell you something. This product is a beast. This product is an absolute beast. Especially we highlight this Java performance element. I mean, we were surprised by this, quite frankly. We were surprised. If you've got Java-specific workloads running at scale, this product crushes it. It absolutely crushes it. So we're very excited about this. Very excited about this product, and even more to come. So this is just kind of one of myriad of other ways we look at it and say, hey, look, if you can do all this stuff in the same size package, what are the benefits? This is just one example of that. I really, honestly, I don't want to go into detail on this. It's, go to AMD.com. I highly recommend if you have a chance to spend time. I think our launch was November 8th. Lisa Sue Dem McNamara is the GM for the product line, and Forrest Nord, who owns all the data center technologies, did a great job. Did a great job in a video series talking about in length, what the benefits of the technology are. And it's very informative. It's a lot of really good stuff going on. I highly recommend you take the time. It's not that long, but it's good. So the best is yet to come, without a doubt. All right. So with that said, let's talk a little bit now about partners and solutions and services. One of the parts of our journey with AWS has been to understand really how to get the message out and really how to help as many people as we can. At first, when I joined, we were working really hard to do marketing, get some messaging out there, and really create solutions and provide some answers to people very quickly so they could use our technology. But you realize AMD's still not a massive company. We're not a sales engine style company, so we don't have that many field reps, right? So we were limited. So now we are actively engaging multiple partners across the globe now. So you'll start to see a lot of initiatives that come through, various partners. I'm going to highlight a couple today, but we've got 10 on the list right now that we're actively working with to deploy. We'll have, by the end of the year, we'll probably have, 50 plus signed up. So we're very excited now about, kind of expanding our breadth and our reach with everybody. And what's great about that is all these partners have different expertise. So what it is we're helping them understand how to use our technology, and they already know the benefits for your specific area that things that you're trying to accomplish. So we're very excited about that approach. And I'll highlight one of these. So FinOps, again, cost optimization. 23 is going to be a slog. At the very least, you should take a look, see what's going on, right? What's your bill look like? So Cloudfix is a great partner we've aligned with recently. I'm very excited to work with these folks. They're fantastic. And I think what's unique about them, they are focused only on AWS. Okay, they're focused only on AWS, and their tool is quite simple. It's fairly elegant when you look at it. But what it does is, you don't have to add agents into your environment to do anything like that. It's very unintrusive. It almost instantly can give you a general guideline of where they believe you've got some opportunity for savings and do an aggregate over that. But it's not only just at the compute level. They're looking at all your services. They're looking at how your services are paired, right? They're looking at the config types you're using. All of these have an impact on performance and usage and cost, okay? On top of that, they take a look at all your hygiene. How many updates are sent out by AWS every month? My goodness, right? It's a lot. Like somebody that's their job. If any of you have to sit there and weed through that stuff and then implement them, God bless you. I'm sorry. It looks brutal. So companies like Cloudfix do a great job of this. We've got some special programs, and they're going to be at the booth. They're with us all week. They've got a very large contingent here as well. I did a podcast with their CEO yesterday. Great crew. I highly recommend you check them out. But I think, most importantly is not only can they show you where those savings are, they can make those changes for you automatically. Okay, where it's allowed, and they'll tell you where they don't think it's allowed, right? But they can do it automatically for you. We've seen some large customers sit down, do it, have a review, and just go ahead and flip in, within an hour meeting, which is crazy, right? So it's something you should consider. On top of that, we talk a lot about high performance computing. So one of our other most trusted partners is Rescale, and I look at Rescale. They are very, very adept in this market. We've worked with them, I think, since I've been here now. And so, we have a lot of experience working with them, and they've got just numerous examples of solutions they can provide above and beyond what you could do, on your own, right? Whether it's a time to market concern or it's a cost optimization concern, it doesn't matter what it is. They're a very good crew. And again, AMD is starting to branch out and to enable other partners and other members of the ecosystem to help as many people as possible in this compute landscape. So they'll be at the booth as well. And I love to highlight, some case studies. So I talk about, AMD.com and the resources we have available there. I love the Accelerate Wind Design a case study because number one, it was a wind turbine on a roof, right? A modular little wind turbine for power consumption, for power generation. Fascinating concept. But the relevant thing here is that as you can imagine, an R&D company, it's a startup. Number one. So what's a major concern for startup? Cost, right? More importantly, how about time to market? Time to market, especially when you're doing modeling, right? So working with AWS and AMD, the big one you should note here is they were able to reduce their simulations from a workstation from 4 hours down to 12 minutes. Well, extrapolate that over 50 different employees doing the same thing, all right? And if it's a serial nature of development, think about time to market. Time to market, a delay in time to market for a startup can be death, right? It can be death for a large company. I could name quite a few right now off the top of my head. So just things to think about, right? Great example. There's another one. We look at TrueCar. Again, another startup. It's kind of a generally known brand. But I think what really struck me about this one was they said, great, well, let's take advantage of the cost benefit. We'll strip that 10% off retail cost on instances right away, right? That's great. They did that. Makes a lot of sense. A lot of benefits, a lot of benefits just in general working with AMD and AWS together. But on top of that, what they did is they took a look at their configuration options and they made some choices based on recommendations. They engineered their application a little bit better and they cost optimized using it. They squeaked out an additional 25% based on those changes. What they figured out was they were using instances that were too large. They didn't need it, right? They didn't need it. And you start talking about scale across a massive environment of compute. I mean, it's hard to really know. It's hard to know if you're optimized. How do you know, right? Get some help. There's plenty of people that can help on this. Plenty of companies that can help on this. But I love that example. Just a little tweak. Now imagine they start really digging deep into the code. They start looking at their architecture a little better. There's so much more. There's so much more juice to squeeze out of that fruit, right? So the last one, Blackboard. Video conferencing solution. Well, what's that dependent on? Latency. Latency in a video conferencing solution can kill you, right? And we just all experienced that at length, 2020, 2021. What I loved about this one was they said, okay, great. Well, it's a startup. So cost, hey, they reduced their media processing batch cost by 28%. Okay, great. That's awesome. That's a good number. I like that number. But really, it was user experience, right? And what does user experience translate to in a video conferencing solution? Greater adoption. So you improve your bottom line with savings. You improve your top line with more revenue, more user adoption, because you're giving your customer a better solution, right? That's why this is important. This is critical, right? It's critical. Your choice matters, right? So I look at all three of these and go, why not? Why not take a look? Why not understand what your compute profile looks like, right? And then take it another step even further. What does your application look like? Your application workload, how does that pair with the AMD technology itself? And if you have questions, you call AMD. You call AWS, say bring in an AMD rep. They'll come in. We'll take you down through it. If they don't know, we'll bring in our head of R&D. We'll bring in anyone. Always. Like, I'm amazed. AMD will ship 10 people over, right? It's incredibly customer focused and extremely willing to bring in our top engineers at any time. We just love this stuff. It's cool. But why not? Why not take a look? Okay? That's the question. If there's anything you take away from this conversation today, it's why not? What's the downside? So with that said, whether you're modernizing legacy infrastructure, you're optimizing new infrastructure, look to save. But I will say this, the next generation of product that comes out, it won't be necessarily just about straight retail price benefits. It's going to be probably roughly, we don't know where it's going to end up, but it's just going to be a heck of a lot more performant, like very much more performant. So, whether it's Milan or potentially maybe a future Genoa offering of some kind, there's a lot of benefits there. So the AMD booth, so I guess it's booth 941. I realized we had a number. I don't know if I haven't seen the numbers. I didn't realize there was a number. Too many people look at numbers, quite frankly. I was worried about getting pushed in a corner somewhere and stepped on. But we've got multiple partners, okay? So we've got a lot of partners that are here on our behalf. We've paid for them to be here, and we want them to be here to talk to you. That's the whole point, right? So you go there, you'll see a schedule, there's intervals. We'll have all of our professionals there as well. There'll be AWS counterparts coming through as well. So engage. We've got a great VR game, like I talked about. There's a line, you gotta kind of get in line. I haven't been able to get in because, I had to get in line. I don't know anybody, I guess. So I couldn't even try the game out. So I heard it's fantastic. So I highly recommend you go. But request a meeting, just request a one-on-one, okay? We've got ample resources. Something else to consider. We are actively funding POCs. So we have more programs that will be coming out very soon offering additional financial benefits in working through partners or even working directly with AMD and AWS. But right now, we've got very, very strong funded program on POCs, okay? So if you're worried, I asked the question, why not? So now I'm going to say, well, if you qualify, we'll pay for your POC. Why not? Right? You don't have time? Think about it. Last part again, AMD.com, AWS/AMD. All right, either way. All right, so we have a reception tonight at the Canaletto, 6 p.m. Please, everyone, love you to come, okay? We've got some great stuff coming that evening. We're doing an event at Topgolf. Go to the booth, talk to some people, figure out, hey, get registered for that. I think it's the entire second floor. We've got separated, all right? We'll have some presence at the event on Thursday night as well. So, just engage with us, and, thank you for coming. Thank you for spending time with us. And this was not an easy trek from the Venetian, so I appreciate you coming all the way here to have this conversation with us. We very much appreciate it, and we appreciate you all being on the journey with us.